Welcome back to Unnoticed, where we dig deep into the stories and moments that often go unseen. Today, we're tackling a thought provoking question. How are you labeling people, opportunities, and even yourself? Please listen in as we have a bit of an emotional conversation that really embodies the power of honest storytelling and the transformation within when we feel safe with our words. Let's get into it. And this is a big one. Labels are something we use every day, sometimes without even realizing it. We label people as good or bad, opportunities as too risky or not for me, and even ourselves. We question things like, "Am I not good enough?" or "Am I, not that kind of a person?" And these labels can be super limiting. Can't they?
Yeah, especially if we're trying to stuff ourselves in that box and we're really not in that place and space in that moment. So I absolutely agree that labels can create barriers, not just in how we see others to that, but also in how we see ourselves, the situations we're currently in, as well as the world around us. And so they can box us in, and it makes it harder to see the full potential of a situation or a person or a solution, right? Um, so today we wanna talk about that. We wanna challenge the labels that that we use, and explore what happens when we start to look beyond them or, you know, look into, do they need to be relabeled? Have they been mislabeled? You know what I'm saying? Do that inventory.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Maybe say we can start with maybe the way we place labels on other people. It's so easy to categorize someone based on a single aspect of the personality or an action, this one thing they did. Um, but when we do that, we're only reducing them to just one dimension. So much of their gifts and their contributions of richness they would add to a relationship, and believe who they really are. But there's definitely some challenges, like you mentioned, by making it difficult to really understand someone, putting your own limitations on yourself and how you see someone and invite someone into your life based off this mislabeling. But I know that, I want to kind of take a few steps back. I know when we hopped on the line today, we were having our own sideline conversation about mislabeling in our own personal life. And, you know, it brought us the question of how do we mislabel ourselves, like our personal mislabeling, um,
Mhm.
whether it's a pre-label or a post-label or a, whatever label. But let's kind of like dive into, you know, the feelings you had this morning, coming into this conversation.
Yeah, I was just just a little heavy this morning. Just but I can't put my finger on it. Can't label it because I don't know exactly what it is, right? And we were discussing the irony of that, especially with the topic we were going to be discussing this morning. Really just thinking about, I mean, labels just as a baseline, like, oh, that's poison. So you're not gonna keep the rat poison up where you keep your spices, right? Because you don't want to accidentally grab the wrong thing or how they are labeled, or whether it's our label or someone else's. Once it's seen and known, it does dictate most often how we interact with that thing, how we show up. If a parking stall is labeled, it's a handicap stall. If you do not have that placard, parking there is no, that's not for you. You know what I mean?
That's
It's
for you.
or expecting mothers, if you're not in that condition, it's not for you. Biohazard, put on a suit. Don't come in here without, some labels are warnings, right? Some labels are, or oh, it's quiet. Hey, we're recording. Shh, keep it down. So there's danger if something is mislabeled. And this morning, I'm realizing there's also, for me, danger, warning, Will Robinson. But what about the things that are not yet labeled? Those things, even from an emotional standpoint or situations that arise in our lives and, you know, oh, it's complicated. Okay, yeah, but what does that mean? That just means you need to unpack what that is. And as you start to unpack, it's like, well, what is this? Where do I, what do I do with this? I know I need to do something with this, but I really don't know what this is right now. So how can I move forward? How can I deal with the this? And I'm doing air quotes for all of you out there in podcast land. What is the this, right? And so when we think about how we show up, not just for others, but for ourselves, and we think about the power, the danger, the responsibility, and the freedom of labels, because I think they will usher in all those things. What do we do? I use the analogy, Jeanette, when we were talking earlier. I was reorganizing our garage a couple weeks ago. And so we're like, okay, this is for the gifting station. Yes, I'm that person. We have like cards and I like doing that because just before it was a thing, it was a thing, right?
Right.
But anyway, and so it's like, okay, the games are going over here, we're putting extra chairs over here, all the things. And then you're like, well, what is this? Yeah, I don't have a place for this. Or am I going to use this? So it's like, do I just do a catch-all bin? Is there just a big bin that has a question mark on it and it's like, I'll figure it out later? And so from an emotional standpoint, or when we're dealing with things in our lives and our families or with internally ourselves, there's pressure. Like today, I just felt pressure to be able to move forward and to make progress, but I'm carrying some things that I don't have labels for. And I'm struggling under the weight of that. So it's like, what's going on with you? I'm good. And you're not really good, but I also don't have the words, the exact vocabulary to label it, right?
Uh-huh.
To process it. And so here we are talking about, how do we see things? Again, it's a filter. It's, you know, looking for a path forward, holding all the pieces, but not really sure sometimes if these are all my pieces,
Right.
if these are some of your pieces, Jeanette, or are these some pieces that I'm carrying for someone else? Like, I just have a bunch of pieces right now, and I don't necessarily have, when you're putting your puzzle together, a lot of time you'll lean the box up so you can see the image of where you're going. And I have no roadmap. I just have pieces.
Right. Yeah. It's funny when you say that. Makes me think of, when we're kind of in these moments of limbo or transition. Like that's really where the transformation happens, right? That's when we start to kind of, when we are pushing ourselves to see beyond, air quotes, the labels. It like creates a sense of like curiosity and, a level of being open-minded, and, it opens to the universe to really challenge us on what we're assuming something is versus the actual reality of that something. Um, you know,
Yeah.
it forces us to be kinder to ourselves and kind to other people that may be going through also similar situations. Again, going back to that grace, right? Giving yourself that
Mhm.
minute. Because I think we were talking earlier and we were saying something like, as we are going through certain things, or like, we're rushing to throw things into a certain box with a certain label. Who owns that time clock, right? Who says when that thing, that feeling, that struggle, that sadness or anger or whatever it is, grief, like who says that thing has to exit and be put away? Again, who's owning that space? Is it us? Is it someone else? Is it, like, just kind of sitting on that for a second too. Like we're allowed to take a minute and a beat to feel the
Mhm.
feels, right? Because there's a lesson in that feeling. So there's a lesson in that, whether it's again that good, bad, or indifferent. There's something to be learned. How we are sitting with it, processing it, how we got it in the first place, where it's going. So I think the conversation about the mislabeling, labeling, pre-labeling, post-labeling it is giving ourselves a second to like fully embody it and understand it and dissect it and think through it to make sure that we don't mislabel it. right? Because we're so fast to be analytical or to problem solve for ourselves and others. But like sometimes we have to really sit with it for a second.
Yeah, I think you're right. I have a good friend who he talks about that. He's like, just sit in it. I'm like, wait, what?
Right.
We've known each other for years, but he would say that, and I'm like, okay, well, first of all, it's a guy. Okay, just saying. No offense to people, but it was like, wait, what? What do you know about like city? Because a lot of times, stereotypically, we're thought of as the more emotional ones and in touch with our feelings, and that men are not. And so that's not true. This is why I'm bringing
Right.
it up, right? And so again, a label that can be quite dangerous because it can be limiting in how you interact or your expectations of another. But he would say that he would say, he calls me that. He's like, that just sit in that for a second. And I'm like, "Eh." And so when you were talking and you said that, I thought of him. I thought of some conversations that we've had. And I like what you said about who who's imposing that time clock, right? And the reason I'm saying that even now as I stumble over the words, it's like maybe that's part of my discomfort because it's not a comfort zone. It's not comfortable sitting in the unknown. It is not comfortable sitting, pausing, exploring the uncertainty of where I'm at. I like, we all like certainty. I mean, we look for guarantees, which we know life has none, but well, few. But the point is, maybe that's part of my heaviness because I've labeled myself as proficient. You know what I'm saying? I've labeled myself as a strong one. I've labeled myself as, and so when I'm sitting in these uncertain moments, the plan and the next steps are not clear because I want them to be clear right now.
Mhm.
I want to do something right now that's uncomfortable. It's my waters being troubled, and it's me realizing as much as I say, "Oh, I got this. It's no big. I'm moving forward. I don't got this."
Right.
And that's sometimes one of the hardest things to admit to ourselves that you know I don't I don't have this. And then my struggle, um, you know, because historically, it's just really, again, another label. And it's really interesting when you start talking about this, how you start to see the stories to tell yourselves and the narratives and the labels. Like, I'm a recovering perfectionist and a recovering people pleaser. And so I'm sitting in this thing and it's like, I'm okay now with embracing help. But in this moment, it's like, help with what? I don't have the words. I can't go and say, hey, Jeanette, I need help with such and so.
Right.
Because I don't know what I need help. I don't know I can't put my finger, or in this moment, I am struggling to define, to put my finger on what it is, what the thing that is unsettling me. So how do you show up in that moment and ask for help? It's like, hey, help me with this thing. Okay, sure. What's the thing? I don't know.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, it goes back to a lot of things that we are experiencing. Well, mainly all things that we're experiencing are not just like one dimensional, right? There's so many different parts of all our people, places, and problems. Um,
Right.
so it's kind of hard to, you know, kind of work our way through those, navigate through those things, internalizing those labels, right? And how make them about us as well, right? So think of all the things that we are dealing with that we carry that have nothing to do with us. Um, and again, I'm not saying that in regards to the way you're feeling today.
No, that it's
It's
general. Yeah.
yeah, in general, but in general, Yeah, so going back to what you were saying before, I think a lot of things that we are kind of working through and navigating through um are not just one dimensional, right? I think a lot of times we internalize parts of different stories and make them about us when they really are not. So a lot of the worry that we carry, a lot of the anxiety or, you know, those feelings of complexity really just come from us putting more weight and burden on ourselves of things that are completely out of our control. And I think sometimes it's hard for us to put them into words sometimes
Mhm.
because they're not our words to put into words.
Right. Or we're rushing the process.
Yeah.
It's kinda like if you're looking through dirty glasses, but you don't know your glasses are dirty, it still impacts how you see. And so the same way for hearing. All the things that you're talking about, um, it is they we have to be careful in that they don't become self-fulfilling prophecies. You know what I'm saying? And because when we hear that, m most of the time, people equate that to something that's not positive, a self-fulfilling prophecy, because it's tied to the stories we tell ourselves, it's tied to the narratives. This is all about, like, how we think. You know what I'm saying? What do we really believe? What So you have those societal influences, you have the influences from your previous experiences, hurts and bruises and traumas. We have those experiences from our families, our households, our upbringing. I mean, it's very interesting to me as we talk about labels and mislabeling things. So I ask you, as we try to declutter, right? As we try to, we keep, there's a popular phrase now to unpack that. So the question is it luggage or is it baggage? Because they're two different things, but they can look very similar.
Yeah.
Then I just saw your eyes light up when I said that. You were like, mm.
No, because I because prior to us hitting record, I mean, I found a couple of quotes, right, that I think resonate with this conversation. Um, there's a quote that says, "Those who spend their time looking for the fault in others usually spend no time to correct their own."
Amen, sister. Read that again. Because
Yes,
I don't know that I
yes,
really heard that.
yes. So those who spend their time looking for the faults in others usually spend no time to correct their own. So that kind of just goes back to judgment and, you know, feeding back into mislabeling and how, again, like one person's action of a one time thing or one thing one person said or one thing a person did, including ourselves, in some places and cases becomes the way we are viewed to the world, right? But I think those people who are looking, I mean, again, like my daddy's always say, like, if you look for something, you're gonna find it, right? So
Yes.
it's like
Yes.
you can look for someone like, oh, that person gets on my nerves, and look for the one thing that gets you nerve, and like now this person's annoying, or I love this person's lips, and now whatever that is, like you find the things that you want or don't want, and that becomes like your catalyst of the way you view them. You invite them in, shun them away, and all that stuff. So again, I just think it's important for us to give grace, look inside, right? Like we are all imperfect and we are all flawed. That doesn't mean that you have to invite everybody in the world into your space, into your home, into a relationship. Everyone is not for you, but I do think there's a level of just humility of knowing that we are flawed too, right? So
Yes.
I mean, I'm not only to be your best friend, but I also know like we all have our own story. So I think that if you look through that lens on relationships, on opportunities, um, and just look for like the silver lining in it, I think it would help. And I mean, again, I almost like I'm always trying to like find the grass is always greener, or whatever mindset, but I do a lot of like self work. Um, And I realized a lot of things that happen in my life to me and for me or like are all me. Yeah. Opportunities that I don't get are because something with that whether I didn't think I was good enough, or I didn't think I deserved it, or I didn't do the resume the right way and the cover letter according to the job description, like whatever it is, whether it's self-sabotage or
Or that it was just not for you.
not for me.
You could have done everything right, but that thing was just not for you in that season.
Right. Which I think is part of the conversation of like understanding that though and being okay with everything or person is not for you, but not just being quick to label it incorrectly.
Right. Right, because I think, oh, wow. Now I get what you were saying on another layer when you talked about pre-labeling and post-labeling, because labels often dictate how you approach and how you interact, but labels also are involved in the after interaction assessments for those of us who do them. Like you talked about, you do a lot of self work. And so that's what that is. It's like, I could have handled that better. Why did I read it that way? But going back to what your dad said, and I heard that from the older people growing up too, you know, you go looking for dirt, you're gonna find it. And the truth of the matter is whatever story you're telling yourself or whatever thing you have in your craw, whether it's positive or negative, you're looking only or mostly, I should say, for things that support that lens, that view.
A narrative.
And so it's very interesting to me because things that truly weren't that can be turned and, like those political people that spin things, you can spin it to support your view. But
Always.
that always.
Always.
And so now which just in your mind, because that's what we're talking about, how we think, how we label, the more evidence, if you will, that you find to support that preconceived notion, to support the story that you came into the situation with. You don't come in with a clean slate and just say, let me show up and let this experience be this experience. No, we're like, I really think this is what this is. And so here's what I learned years ago. This is Yvetteism. And I'd like to, I don't know that we've ever talked about this, Jeanette. It's when, when we're talking about doing self work, one of the things that we talk about is wholeness and how a lot of people think as it relates to relationships, specifically marriage, oh, I'm whole when I get married, or I'm going to find somebody and I'll be whole. No, it's about being whole. It's about being uniquely yourself. It's about being who you are, understanding who you are before you even try to hitch your wagon to someone else's, right? But my point to that is when we talk about being our authentic selves, being a whole, unique creature created by God, a lot of us have brokenness and have trauma. And even as you move through your healing, people don't understand. Okay, I'm beginning to understand that whatever you're going through in those in our life moments impacts how we hear. So if you're dealing with hurt and trauma and whatever, whether you know it consciously or not, it impacts how you hear.
Oh, yes.
If you're in a good place, it impacts how you hear. And so I think it's very, very interesting because if it impacts how you hear, it then would follow suit that it impacts how we see. It impacts the filter in the lens of how we process.
Yeah. I mean, like, let's go back to the glasses, right? The dirty glasses, and we see clearly. So interestingly enough, it's like the fact that the brain tricks you in thinking glasses are clean, so you can see
Hmm.
clearly. So it's interesting that you said that because again, it's about the story we tell ourselves.
I heard what you said, but so that's why, like, you take off your glasses, like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't realize these were so dirty." Like,
Yes, yes, the brain works in overtime. That's also why, I mean, this is, like, kind of a fun fact, but I used to work for a French sunglass company, but I learned a lot about eye health from working for them. Like, if lets the dirty, your brain is working overtime to clear it up so you can still see at them clearly. Also, when you have glasses and they're dirty, sometimes you might actually get a headache because their brain is working on overtime to make your vision clear, and the barrier is the dirty lenses.
so no, that's interesting because basically you're compensating.
Yeah,
Your mind knows what it should be doing, and it knows the standard.
what it should be. So it's, yeah, so it's making it so,
Right.
um, at a deficit, though. Deficit, right.
Right.
Yeah, and you have the headaches, you have fatigue, you have all these side effects, right, of the mind telling you what you wanna hear and what you wanna see.
That is so powerful, alarming, and beautiful.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's the danger of it because we don't realize the damage that compensation can do until sometimes it's it's a huge issue.
Oh, yeah.
I know we're just getting into the meaty goodness, but here is a good place to pause, and we will pick this up again in part two of Mislabeled. I'm your host, Yvette McCauley.
And I'm Janet Robinson McWilliams, signing off.